So I think many of you will already know, and I'm sure as part of some of the other learning journeys you've kind of covered some of these things, but I thought it'd be good initially to just take a bit of an introduction to some of the hazard dynamics in urban areas and how these then sort of influence the way that early warning systems in urban areas kind of ideally should function because of these. So as you might know, in general, the urban environment kind of heightens risks because of a concentration of people, assets, and their built-up area, particularly in relation to things like flooding. There's lots more pluvial and flash flooding because of greater impervious surfaces and less drainage capacity. So you can see in the kind of illustration here on the urban water cycle versus the kind of the rural or the natural water cycle, where there's a lot less infiltration and less groundwater flow, which really affects the kind of speed at which flooding can kind of really happen and take hold. There's also strong microclimates or weather conditions that vary a lot from one neighborhood to another and produce a lot more localized hazards, which again has lots of implications in terms of early warning and needing to kind of have a bit more granular detail when it comes to forecasts and things, because it can just vary so much across the city. Also, as we're talking about heat today as well, there's obviously a strong role of the urban heat island effect, where the temperature in urban environments compared to the surrounding areas is a lot greater, and you can often end up with kind of effectively like heat domes, as you can see in the diagram below there. And also in terms of drought and kind of having not enough water, generally the kind of greater reliance on centralized provision and more centralized services, and also limited water supply sources for kind of rapidly growing urban populations. It also creates a lot of vulnerability to water shortages as well, which is also obviously a bit more of a longer term stress than flooding, but it's still something else that also should be considered in effective early warning systems as well. And I think in general, all of this means, as I've said already, in a way that city level forecasts from national meteorological agencies are generally not always as relevant, and everything kind of becomes more accelerated in this context. And so really being able to give as much warning time as possible is kind of critical, but also a very hard thing to do given all of the different dynamics.